feed. I'm not in the US, but everyone in my feed is talking about one thing. And this is the White House's recently released Winning the AI Race, America's AI Action Plan, which I don't know if you've heard about it, but one of the things that they're calling for is, wait, some, yeah, is it's an aggressive strategy, for the US to lead the world in AI, which includes pushing for significant AI integration into education and the workforce to prepare young people. So I'd just like to start out, and please introduce yourselves next when you talk. I would like to start out and let you know your thoughts, on that or whatever you'd like to share. So I can maybe call on someone to start. Dylan.
I yeah.
Cool. Hi, I'm Dylan, Dylan Williams. I go to Colby College. I'm a rising junior there, and I'm studying education and psychology. I guess should I just get started on like my thoughts, or should I? Okay.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead. Yeah.
I mean, that's a tricky topic. I'm not exactly sure about the specifics of that, like release from the White House. So I feel like I'd have to be a little more knowledgeable on the topic to answer like super concretely, but. I guess like given what I know about AI and education, like for example, I have been teaching like over the summer, the past few years, I've been teaching English to Japanese expatriate students as like an ESL one-on-one teacher, and like in, for example, creating lesson plans for these like 1 hour sessions, I have been using AI, like I would say reasonably frequently to like consult I guess with like what well I guess I use ChatGPT, but what ChatGPT has gleaned from whatever education resources are available online, to sort of see if I can, for example, like extend a lesson plan or have it come up with like a fun game that I can insert in my lesson to, I guess, like help kids stay on track or give them a little distraction. So I think that in certain contexts, there's definitely a place for AI within education, but I think that really depends on the sort of limits and boundaries that you create for it. Um, yeah.
Go ahead, Bailey.
Okay. Hi, my name is Putu Bailey, and I'm currently a rising freshman into Western Carolina University. I'm going to study communications, um, and uh, with AI inside the education, it kind of just depends on how it's used. Because many peers throughout high school I've known have used AI to just do the work for them, which like completely limits the creativity and imagination into what they're putting out, like an essay. But personally, I've used AI to kind of help better my writing. Um, like if I wrote an essay, I would put it into ChatGPT and ask it to grade it for me, and it would give me like tips on what I could improve on, and I pretty much just took those and made it my own image and put it back into my essay to improve it. But it just depends on how the student wants to use AI in their like education, because we can't like fully trust if they're going to use it to better themselves or to just solely do the work for them. But yeah.
Thank you.
Um, oh, sorry.
No,
Um,
no.
my name is Kalena King. I'm a rising junior at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm studying psychology and legal studies there. Agreeing with Bailey, I really think it depends on how people are using it in their education. I think it's already become a big part of education. Like, I really don't know someone who hasn't used AI at some point. And that's kind of like also what you were saying, Bailey, like kind of limiting for creativity and being able to put in the work yourself. But I understand that it's just become such an essential part of day-to-day life at this point. Like I feel like almost at this point it's kind of almost replacing Google. Like people AI chat consult them before they kind of go to Google, I feel like sometimes. Um, but in terms of education, I feel like the most essential part of it is creating this like chain reaction, starting with like maybe people our age and kind of just teaching down the ladder so that once like elementary schools get to the age where they're in middle school and they like start using AI more, they kind of are prepared to know about like how to use it properly and not abuse the power, let it do their work for them. I feel like that's really important. But I'm also in the same boat as Dylan, where I don't exactly know too much on what the White House said. But I feel like AI, because it's so new, it's so fresh, and it's moving so fast, I feel like it's one of those things where it doesn't really have a lot of limitations, rules. It's kind of just this big entity that's consuming a lot of people's lives. So I personally want to look into what the White House said and like look at like, is there regulations, limits, and things that are helping create these standards for kids to follow in education? Like I'm wondering the legal side of it, considering what I'm studying in school. Like I'd kind of want to look more into that. So yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, just I feel like to echo what everyone's said so far. Oh, I'm Grace, by the way. I'm a rising junior at Harvard studying social studies and econ. But yeah, I think echoing pretty much what everyone else has said, I think AI can be a really great tool in education and can be something helpful for both students and teachers and facilitators. But I do think, from my understanding, this White House briefing or whatever gives more power to AI companies, which I think can become dangerous if we're not restricting what these AI companies are doing and how they're expanding their own AI tools. And we also don't want to forget or like lose focus on like the mental health of people that are using these tools. And we don't want there to be no regulation where it becomes a super dangerous thing for young kids or teachers or just anyone in general to be using AI. So it I think it could be a really good thing, but we don't. But I do fear like the lighter restrictions that are going to be that could perhaps be implemented onto these AI tools and companies, because I think a common theme is we don't want to give too much power to these companies that are kind of just monopolizing the user's time and energy and money. So I think it's treading a dangerous line, but I think it can still be a super helpful tool.
Do you feel like, and I'd like to just ask the round again, you can each give your opinion. Do you feel like you get the support, like in education? We just heard the story of a high school, she's going to be a high school senior, and she actually wrote the paper all by herself, and she was accused of AI, using AI, and she got a 0, and there was no way to not get a 0. And now every time she writes her a paper, she puts it through 5 different AI tracker tools. And so this for me is, speaking against pushing forward with AI in education. So I'm wondering, like, do you all feel like you have the support you need? Do you feel like you're listened to if you would speak up, or any of your peers? Maybe we can just go through whoever wants to
Yeah,
comment, or then we can.
Angeli, I also wanted to say DT was able to join. She was having computer challenges before. Her camera's not working, but I wanted to give her a chance to also say hi,
Oh,
introduce
thank you.
herself, and add if she has some thoughts.
Hi,
If it
I'm
would be all
Deepti.
right, I would like to go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, just can just 1 minute because we have a new addition, so you
oh,
can definitely
okay.
go. Yeah, after she finishes.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Deepti. I'm a rising junior at San Marin, and I'm really excited to be here and learn more.
Thank you. So Bailey, go ahead.
Um, that I was also going to talk about how difficult it can be for teachers to tell the difference between AI generated work and a student's work. I've had multiple occurrences of friends of mine and fellow peers who have like written the work on their own, and the teacher puts it through like AI tester, like, is this work AI? And those testers can be completely wrong, and my friends get penalized for it. I've had a teacher who got so stuck back on grading work because of the overwhelming amount of usage of AI and her being confused on whether the students actually created the content or not. And that is like another really dangerous thing that would affect the school system and education itself, is the fear of whether, as I said earlier, if students are actually producing their own work. And it just puts even more stress on the teachers um, to grade the work and to like make sure they're doing the job that they're supposed to be doing.
That's a good point about the teachers. Deepti.
I kind of really agree with Bailey. When like I see AI for my schoolwork, it kind of helps me, but I also feel like it kind of like distracts me, and I have like the fear like it's my work, but like oh like I might get caught for like my own work. If like I produce like a good work, now it's like my teachers may think it's like flagged for AI or something. But also for like many of my assignments, it's like really helped me. But like also I realized that it's like super easy to like cheat off and not like you can like get away with like not doing work, because like I've done it multiple times. Like I've used AI, like for example Spanish, like I can't really speak a lot of Spanish and I have to complete like a mandatory course, but like using like got AI or something, it like gives me direct answers, and like I almost like honestly haven't learned anything because of it. So I feel like in some parts it's also kind of harming my education, like using AI. But like when I don't understand like deeper concepts, it also helps like simplifying stuff. Thank you.
I can add in too. I think one thing that I've always found interesting with like using your own work versus AI, especially at the college level where you might be in pretty like writing intensive courses. What I always think about is if like a majority of people are using AI, it like almost like how there's grade inflation, like the curve of the class changes. So if everyone's using AI and the writing level is like more sophisticated, if someone uses their own writing and it maybe sounds less sophisticated because it's not, writing at a super professional level that AI can like generate, then it looks worse than the people who are using AI. And then that could then result in them getting a bad grade because the AI writing is looking more professional and is written better and is getting better grades without the professor or teacher noticing. So it kind of creates this weird, I think it kind of creates this weird rat race where it's like people want to use AI because other people are using AI, they're going to get good grades, and they don't want to be the one who's using their own writing and it looks worse because they're not using AI and they don't have that like professional twang that, or like the super sophisticated twang that like ChatGPT can put into an essay. So I think it can be tricky because if like a professor might not be the best at noticing AI, um, and people are getting away with AI, you kind of want to maybe lean towards using AI because you out of fear of, oh, I'm using my own work and it's not going to be as good as AI is using like with that other students are using. So I think it's kind of tricky because it's, I feel like I'm noticing in some classes it's almost now, oh, we need to use AI, like we all have to use AI so that we all get good grades, and like I don't want to be the one who's not using AI and then getting left out. So I think it's an interesting dynamic like shift that's happening, at least that I've noticed now that AI, because in high school, I don't know about like Dylan and Kalina, but AI wasn't really like didn't really come out by the time we were in college. So I never really noticed anything in high school, but I think now in college, as it's becoming more sophisticated, I'm noticing those changes with like behaviors around AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm curious, like in that sort of dynamic or culture where everyone is sort of, motivated to, whether it's by pressure or just of, like out of their own curiosity or their own desire to get better grades to use AI. Like if like education should just like change its incentive structure as a whole, like to get students to like be more motivated to do their own work. Because like, if you're competing for grades, for example, then obviously the easiest and most efficient way to get that grade is going to be using AI. And like, again, like it's a time and also like an output thing. Like it's going to take you the least amount of time. And it's probably going to get you the best result. So, like having grades as sort of the outcome or the benefit of that, especially in, a very competitive setting like college. I don't think that's, maybe the most effective. Changing it would obviously be difficult, and like I'm not exactly sure as to like, what the other outcome would be, but I feel like because AI is such a uh like sorry, lost my train of thought. Because AI is kind of like an unstoppable force at this moment, I think that it might not be a bad idea to start considering, instead of like trying to just put regulations on it, what are some ways that we can change like the surrounding structures in order to, I guess, like adapt to its usage.
Yeah, Dylan, I think about that a lot, and I'm curious from you guys, like if I were a teacher right now and I've worked with teachers in the context of implementing AI and they're like, I don't even know how to assess my kids. It's like completely changed it. And I think about the development of skills a lot in workforce preparation because of the work that I do, with you guys as interns, and like what are the skills that are going to be most critical in this like highly dynamic job force that AI is, has already disrupted, and wonder if there's a way to put those skills in the forefront of assessment in schools. So like if I was a teacher, can I possibly attach the grades to something as dynamic as active listening and speaking and real-time problem solving? And what would that type of assessment look like? But I'm kind of curious from like the team here of like what do you think is going to be the most important skills as you enter this workforce that's been disrupted already by so much AI?
Well, I mean, agreeing with what everyone had already said, I feel like I really personally don't like AI. Like I really try not to use it. I kind of just like a lot of my friends use it and I kind of like saw what has been like going on and I just kind of personally have really tried not to, even though I do have that fear that Grace was talking about that it could put me at the bottom of the rat race, I guess is what you said. Um, but I think that like it kind of sets up this system because it's so unknown where we could be looking in like 10 years down the line and our generation of people who are in the workforce, like our doctors, our lawyers, don't necessarily have the full capability of their skills because they used a lot of AI in schools. I mean, they could, but they also couldn't. And I feel like that's a really big like fear to think about because I don't want my doctor not knowing the answers when they're treating me. Um, but I think that the best way to do it would be, I mean, I feel like the best way to do it would be, like you said, like having school and like evaluations be a little bit different because it's very, I feel like school and especially in college is very traditional where it's essay, test, like whatever, unless it's a small group, it's a presentation. So I feel like more adjustments need to be made on teachers, but that's also kind of a hard expectation to put onto teachers. And then with assessing, if they're going to find AI, they have to kind of use AI to find it because it's so niche. So I feel like there just needs to be a lot more focus on it in schools than there is, where I feel like it's just this thing that's growing at a pace that we don't really have have control over. And I think there just needs to be some sort of pause or stop to like figure things out and then it can continue to grow at its own speed. So
I really agree with Kalina, but on the other hand, I use AI a lot for like educational purposes, but I also like use it sometimes like if I get lazy, I make like AI do half my work and like I get a better grade for it, obviously, like some of the work, not like essays and stuff, but like other work. I see like a major difference is like when you're writing essays or like tests, it's super easy to cheat off AI. But like in the classroom, like if it's like more hands-on, like if the teacher gives us like more hands-on work, or you're actively like working with other people or like or making something at the like spontaneous like moment, I feel like that kind of bypasses AI and you can't really use AI for that kind of stuff. So more like skills would be like creativity and like kind of like being like able to adapt to change when it comes, or some of like the major skills I feel like that would like help you better fit in the world, changing world.
Yeah, I think building off of that, I was in a class this semester that had like a total like no technology like ban, like in the like lectures, no technology. And it wasn't like a huge lecture, probably like 50 people, so they could monitor it pretty easily about like, oh, put your phone away, put your laptop away, whatever. And at first I was like, oh, like I don't want to do this. Like it's gonna be so annoying. Like I don't have the attention span to sit here for 2 hours and like not have my computer and not have like something I can do if I get bored. But and also then we had a discussion aspect of that where it was 2 hours of like just discussing with 8 people, which was also no technology. And I think that that actually ended up being one of my favorite classes, and I think it made me remember what it was like to have to like learn and use critical thinking skills and have to rely on like my engagement in the class and not be able to like look something up afterwards and be like, oh, like what does this mean, because I wasn't listening. It was like a super, although boring at times, it was like a really great way to like become engaged. And while that's kind of hard to do in this day and age, to ask people to not use technology in class, I think that it's a really good measurement if we're looking for ways to like grade people on things other than their work, of like, in that discussion, are you able to participate? Because if you're not participating, then that means you likely weren't paying attention, or you likely weren't really doing the work, because there was nothing stopping you from paying attention in the lecture or like trying to be engaged. So I think it's an interesting concept of like just trying to eliminate it altogether, which is definitely difficult, because I've also seen at like the education level of people find ways to get away with anything. Like you can find a way to get, your phone out or like use chat during class. But I do think that honestly, it's probably one of the most easily implemented ways to try and assess people on things other than their work, maybe.
Jumping off of that, I think communication would be like just talking is like a really important skill to have, because how else are you going to get anything done if you don't know how to talk? I just feel like the use of AI to do a bunch of stuff has hindered people from like actually speaking up about issues they have, because they can just turn to AI and just be like, oh, what does this mean, or how do you do this? And it just like it takes away from like the actual learning aspect of being in school.
Yeah, beyond like very specific skills, like I very much agree with what Grace was saying about like maybe just different classroom policy. Like I guess at my school, I'm like fortunate enough to go to a very small school, which I think suits my learning style very well. But like all my classes are like around 30 students, I would say. And so like there is a lot more, I guess like I don't know what to call it. There's like a sort of unspoken agreement between students, especially because like everyone sort of has eyes on each other, to like not, like be distracted, especially in like upper division courses where it's like everyone's like very involved in their academic subject. It's like whether it's seminar style classes or even lecture style classes, it's like no one's really using tech during lessons, and so everyone's like super involved and like ultra focused, I guess. And I feel like just branching off of that, there are a lot of skills that can be sort of like, learned or cultivated, whether that's speaking and like listening, which I think is like, some of the most important things that you have to kind of be on top of in a seminar style class. And then, the skill of like asking questions, especially when you're not relying on, I don't know, AI to, for example, like record your lecture and then summarize it. That to me is like the bane of like academia, is like summarizing lessons like that. Like I don't get it. I would never do that. But yeah, I think overall, something like what Grace was saying in terms of like no tech classes or just like school policy in general could be beneficial for sure.
Well, that was really insightful from all of you. I want to ask a little bit more about what Bailey was talking about speaking, right? And I know Tiffany and I have talked about this because there's this book, The Anxious Generation. It says the young generations are all have, all sorts of issues related to tech. And one of the things that we talk about is actually issues with personal expression, like looking at each other in the eye and asking questions, speaking up, this kind of thing. And I just wanted to know, is that something that you see in the people around you? Do you think this is a misconception? You know, we're not any worse than the older generations. I really would love to know, like, whether you see in the people around you technology hindering, you know, in that way or helping, maybe.
I've just mainly noticed from like my peers in high school. I've been in a couple of like honors classes where they wouldn't ask questions at all, like whether, and you could tell like they didn't understand. They'd get that look on their face, looked side to side. They couldn't tell like what was being told to them. But nobody would ever ask questions. They would just sit in silence. And, I think it just takes away from everybody because like sometimes people get scared to ask questions or sometimes people just don't ask questions. And I just feel like in response to that, they turn to AI and be like, what was this mean? Like, what is this talking about? Or like, I mean, I'm not really sure how to explain it well, other than like they just, I don't know,
I think it
they
makes
just,
sense. Basically, before you didn't have the option of asking AI, you had to speak up and ask, right?
yeah, I just feel like now that the tool is like put in place, they just don't really feel the need to ask because they can just turn to something else to figure it out later. It's kind of like not procrastination. It's just like I'll figure it out later kind of deal. It's like I don't have to ask
Yeah,
now. I can wonder later.
and also just like the like diminishing or atrophy of the muscle of interaction. Like why do I go to a person if I can just go to this device? And it kind of gets into this whole digital well-being realm, which is, like what are the other ways that technology is impacting the way that we just live our lives and interact or don't interact, whether it's AI or, things that capture our attention for the time being, for the duration while we're giving up time.
I also think it's interesting. I think we like someone mentioned like Google versus like AI and like that, like asking questions via that. And like I've definitely found myself like, you used to have to like, or you still do, but like if you look something up on Google, you might not get the response right away. So it's like, why did I not get that response? Like, how do I have to change my question to like get a better response of what I'm looking for? Like, what do I need to read with the websites they gave me to like, do I need to sift through this? Like, there's a lot more like thinking that goes involved in like thought of like, okay, that's not the right answer. Like, just things like that, which involve a lot more critical thinking. Whereas like, I find myself just going to AI because it's like they'll give me the sifted through perfect response. And then even if they don't, you can ask such a specific follow-up question to get the response that you want, which is sort of like I find it difficult to know whether or not that's good or not because I enjoy the ability of being able to ask super specific follow-up questions that they're going to be able to understand that like has like a conversation chain, whereas like Google doesn't have a conversation chain. I can't ask a follow-up question. I have to change my question or change what I'm looking for. So I think it's interesting because it's like I appreciate chat's ability to, or AI's ability to like have a conversation chain and to have that kind of virtual conversation, but it also completely eliminates the thought that goes into like using a regular research tool where it's like, that's not what I wanted. How do I change it? Or let me read these articles. Is this right? But I'm also gaining information by reading these articles. Like it's just an interesting switch that I think people who are undecided about how they feel about AI can like fall into that realm of like being confused about how they feel about it because it can be such an easy tool, but also it does just eliminate like the ability to like use critical thinking when asking questions and trying to like follow up and figure out what's wrong about the answer and what do I actually want to know and things like that.
I feel like that's one of the more, oh, sorry.
No, go
Um,
ahead, Dylan.
okay. I feel like that's one of the more easily like changeable parts about AI, or should be easiest to regulate, is that like conversational aspect. Because I feel like AI as a research tool, something that you can consult for like just information is a good thing. Like that promotes curiosity, etc. And like the pitfall of that though is like in this conversational aspect of AI, where are we losing like connection that should be, I guess, like had with people, like humans, as opposed to like say a digital companion, whether that's, I mean, mainly just chatbots, I guess. And so, um, and like I guess to challenge, I would honestly challenge the idea of like technology being the primary reason of like children or students losing like the ability to interact, because I guess at least in my personal experience, like I have not seen that at all. Like I still see kids asking questions in class. There's still like definitely an importance between like say a relationship between a student and a teacher in a class, because like I don't know, if you want to do well, then like the class content that is being curated by the teacher is probably most well known by the teacher. And so like I feel like if you're practicing like I don't know, like critical thinking in class, like you probably wouldn't consult too many resources outside of the class, especially if it's structured well and using like I don't know, say like scientific articles or something, because that's not something that ChatGPT can do very well as of yet, like citing correctly and like pulling information from very specific sources. Yeah.
Um, Going off of what Dylan said, I'm seeing like at least in the high school level that AI is kind of like eliminating like human interactions in the sense that like if you did like group projects or something, before it used to be like, oh, we can like get together at like someone's house or like at a cafe and get this done. But like in many of the group projects now, we're just like, oh, let's just make AI do it, put some clicks in it, and then just like AI's making almost our entire presentation and like simplifying it. It's also like done like for AP physics kind of classes, it's like done some of our calculations too, and the teacher knows it also. And before it used to be like us critically thinking about it, communicating with our friends, like helping each other out, asking the teacher, and now it's just like AI is kind of like doing it for us. But I also feel like it's not fully like damaging connection. I feel like it's just reducing the amount of interactions and all with our peers and teachers.
Yeah, that's a really good point, DP. Recently we had Dr. Benjamin Maxwell as a mentor for our Generation Remix cohort, and he shared that the number one indicator of mental health and well-being is that social connection. And so if we see that atrophy over, like for kids, if we see that kind of go away or diminish, like that's a real concern when it comes to, digital well-being. And so I'm curious, this group, many of you have spent a lot of time thinking about digital well-being, and I'm really curious to hear, what your perspectives are on it. Like, what are some of the well-being challenges that you're seeing emerging as digital natives and kids that have grown up with and certainly the kids coming up behind you have had it, even multiplied from what you experienced. And also maybe some of the tips that you're trying out to kind of control or take back control and have a better sense of well-being for yourselves.
Well, I mean, I personally, since hearing that from Dr. Maxwell, and just kind of like throughout this whole summer of working here, I feel like it definitely has opened my eyes that I think social media and technology and AI is like our generation having a system that's foreign to any other generation, but they're craving connection. But so they're going after and after social media, phone, texting. And some of that is helpful, being able to like text your friend across the country and talk to them whenever. Like, I think that fuels connection and helps with things. But I think that a lot of it is like you're trying to go after what you think is good for yourself, but after a long time on screens or on social media or being exposed to a lot of things, you find yourself actually not feeling better. So I feel like it's just one of those things where bigger companies, bigger phone companies and social media companies are just monopolizing off of you. So I feel like one of the biggest tips for me that I've been trying to follow is just locking my phone in a drawer Like sometimes, as much as I want to hang out with my friends and get that connection because I can't, because, oh, they're off at school. Oh, like I need to see what's going on with them. The best thing for me is to just get off my phone completely, stop looking at their Instagram, and just honestly just call them and rely on the most standard form of connection with people. And just, I know having a conversation with them in person is going to be far better than looking at their comments in their like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, as much as I want to. But I also think that another thing for me that's been super important is really not getting stuck in doom scrolling at night, because I just like, how am I going to have a productive, well-rested day the next day if I spent 3 hours on my phone and then I try to fall asleep and it doesn't work. But the main thing is that people are just trying to find connection, but it's not the most successful way in doing that, I think, even though it's obviously the most addicting, everyone does it, and there's no really stopping it. It's just, it really is just something where you have to just catch yourself. Like you have to do it for yourself. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. So you just have to catch yourself in fixing your habits. So.
Yeah, I think that last part that you said, like you can't help anyone who doesn't want to be helped, like really resonates with me because my like probably biggest thing that I do is I just try and like give myself like, okay, I'm going on my phone at like 10. I'm gonna turn it off at 10:20 and go do what I need to do and like give myself like obviously like being on like I don't know, I like to be on my phone, which is I think a natural thing, but I try and limit it in moderation and understand that like I can get stuck in that doom scroll and like forget about like the responsibilities that like might not be like super time like sorry, like not like super important immediately, but like something that I need to do in the near future, and it's easy to just get stuck and then, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, and it keeps happening. So I just set myself like, okay, if it's 10 o'clock right now, I'm gonna turn my phone off at 10:20 and get up. And like you said, like it works for me because I know that that's like gonna work for me, and I know that I can tell myself, okay, I'm gonna get up. It's not gonna be something where it's like, oh, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Like I know that I need to help my future self and like do the thing that I need to do, and it's gonna help my well-being and like my tomorrow self. So I know it works for me, but I think it is interesting because I don't think that would work for everyone, and I think it's easy to say like, oh, just turn your phone off, but it's not a universal ability that everyone has. So I think it's interesting how it can be different for everyone.
Similar to what Grace said, I've been doing something similar, but I just like put like a time limit on the app. Like I think Instagram has it where like I put like a 1 hour time limit for the whole day, and it like reminds me, it's like, oh, it's almost 1 hour. Do you want to close the app? And I feel like that kind of like gives me like a time check. Oh, I've been like at it for so long, and it's like time I go do something else and stuff. And I've also noticed that like when I like think about it, I've like trying to been making plans more offline than just like texting my friends on like Snapchat and Instagram. Just like more like, oh, let's just go to the pool or let's go on a hike and do like more physical plans than just like be like on like on like texting them or calling them all day.
Yeah, it's sort of going.
Oh, go
Bailey, you can
ahead.
go.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
twice,
Go
twice in
ahead.
a row. No, okay, this time go ahead, Bailey.
Um, Dealing with my own digital well-being, I mainly try to indulge myself into hobbies that I want to perfect. So, for example, like I draw sometimes, and I like put my phone away, like toss it to the side, and just get endeavored in a more like tactile, like handsy hobby, or I perfect my drumming or something, just to get my mind like off of like wanting to just open and just look for hours, and instead try to like focus on some things that I want to fix about personal hobbies. So that's how I've been trying to limit it.
Yeah, I think for me, like a mix of like, personal agency and a soft, like, I guess like outside push or reminder is the most helpful. So like I have like, I guess semi-program my phone to like whenever I open Instagram, it'll like set a 5 minute timer and then also start a stopwatch. So like um it seems kind of overkill, but for me it's helped over time to like reduce my usage just because a reminder like oh, you spent X amount of time on this app is easy to like ignore and push past. And I feel like that can sort of contribute to maybe like a learned helplessness where you're like after X amount of times clicking off and being like actually you know what, I'm gonna spend more time on this app. It's like you know after the 10th time, it's like, you're not even seeing the notification. It's just like a momentary distraction. And then you're like, nope, I'm going to continue scrolling. And so, for me, like the combination of being able to, after I close the app, I see the amount of time I've spent on it, like immediately. And I'm like, ugh, yikes. I really could have been doing something better. And so for next time, right, it's like I don't know, I think it's somewhat of a process to kind of maybe wean yourself off or like gradually come to the realization of the amount of time that you're spending because uh, unless you do it unless you notice in real time, it's harder, I think, to reflect and look back and be like really internalize how much that amount of time was and what else you could have been doing.
Yeah, that opportunity cost is real, Dylan. The mandate, by the way, from Jonathan Haidt's work in the Ancients Generation, there's like a 4 new norms mandate, or call to action, if you would. And two of them are related to kind of delayed access. One is no smartphones till high school, and two is no social media until 16. And that's like the new guidance. I'm curious from this group if you agree or disagree with that, if like you had younger siblings or like advice to younger, would you encourage those norms, and do you think that's like the way to go?
Personally, I think I would encourage it because, like, I feel like I got like Instagram and Snapchat kind of young, without even my parents knowing, honestly. So, I feel like I would encourage it because it kind of took away some of my productive time, and I didn't really see a purpose of having it now that I like think about it when I'm older. Like, it didn't really help me, and it was just like kind of like a distraction where I could just have been like going out, doing a sport, or doing something like productive instead.
Yeah,
Um,
I oh
sorry.
Sorry. You go, you go.
Okay. I personally like look back on like my like childhood and like my middle school, elementary school, like really fondly. Like I think I didn't get like a digital phone until like an iPhone until 8th grade maybe, which is not high school, but I had like a flip phone because like I needed to like communicate with my parents. Like I'm getting on the bus and like I'm gonna be home at 5, like if I went to like hang out with friends or something. So that was definitely, I mean, maybe a little different, but it was pretty much just a communication tool with my parents. But I remember like calling my friends on like the landline and being like, "Are you guys free?" and like walking down to the park. And I just like really enjoyed that time of my life. Like I'm just like smiling thinking about it because it just felt so like pure, and going back to like what we're talking about, like just like the purely just connection of all the times and memories we have are in person together, and there's no technology or phone involved in that. And I think it's super valuable. I think you learn a lot about yourself at that age. Like you're going through such pivotal times in your life, and knowing like who are your friends, who you're not, who aren't your friends, like what you like about people. And it's not just through this like filtered, like, oh, they have this amount of Instagram followers and like they're popular, and like popularity wasn't based on social media back then, or wasn't based on like, digital life. And I think that, to me personally, I think it really just like ground who I was and like what my values were. I mean, like values as like a 10-year-old, but like what I liked and what I didn't like, instead of, basing all of my opinions on what someone's like social media was or Snapchat score. I don't know, just like stuff like that. So I think that to me makes a lot of sense. I think it's a super smart idea to try and hold off on kids having access to social media or phones before they're in high school, for sure.
I definitely agree. That I think it's a really good thing to encourage, and it's really important that people do that, especially for developmental purposes. But I think it has to be presented in a super specific way where it involves personal advocacy versus parents saying, you're not allowed this, you can't do that, kids are not going to follow that, and it's just going to create defiant kids. And honestly, if their parents aren't aware that they're on, like a lot of my friends who they weren't allowed social media and like their phones like much later, they ended up just hiding it from their parents, but then they were just even more obsessed, or even they weren't having conversations with their parents where they were like, oh, this is happening, where they're like, oh yeah, I'm talking to this and this person. And I was like, I would probably tell your parents. They're like, well, I can't because I am not allowed to have it. So it's just one of those things where it has to be presented in like a super specific way where it is about advocacy and responsibility. Like for me, when I got social media and stuff, I had to earn it. I had to like for every app that I wanted, I had to get like a quarter or a semester of good grades so my parents could see that I was responsible, understood the implications that came with social media and the internet and all this sort of stuff. So I think it has to it's probably unlikely, but if it comes and it's presented in a very specific way where kids aren't gonna want to do what they're told they can't do, then I think it would work, and it would be obviously great for their development and well-being and all things like that.
I feel like I agree and slightly disagree with that point as to like specifically the parents like talking to children part, because I fully agree that, you know, if the way that the message is delivered is you can't do this, you can't have a phone, you can't have social media, that's obviously not going to work. But I think that there should be a because, and like the there should be more of a conversation in that sort of interaction where I guess you know, a parent is like telling a child that they can't have a phone until X age or can't have social media until 16 or whatever. And yeah, like the because and explanation, I think, of why, and an understanding both for parents and for children of the risks and uh I guess like the possible benefits of, say, owning a phone or having social media is like an important thing to understand, because in some circumstances that's not exactly possible. Like maybe not the social media part, but like especially in having a phone, for example, like there may be some circumstances in which it makes more sense to have a phone at this age. And so like having a hard number isn't exactly something that's like productive across, it's not generalizable, I think. And so there needs to be more like concrete understanding, I think, especially by parents at this point, that like surrounding like screen usage and social media usage and etc., so that they can have like more productive conversations with their kids where they are able to explain their logic, you know, surrounding their decisions, like no phone or no social media, etc.
Um, oh my gosh, I had the thought and then I lost it. I think pushing back, like having a phone itself to 16 is kind of much, because when you get to middle school, or at least where I'm from, you have like this big broad opportunity to indulge yourself in more extracurricular activities that may take place after school, and the need to like contact your parents about like, hey, this is happening or this is happening is needed. But going off on what Kalina said, I definitely think that they should have to like prove their responsibility in order to have social media, because that's what my parents did as well. Um, um, uh, I have a little brother who had technology at a very young age. He had like a tablet at like the age of like 7, which was like way earlier than I ever got one. And I've like seen how it's like developed, how he like engages with people, and I really think having a limit on that for earlier ages is definitely needed. I've also seen a bunch of like children from like family friends who have been like indulged in media um, that is like completely like out of age range. like I've heard some things come out of 12-year-old, like a 12-year-old's mouth that should not be coming out of a 12-year-old's mouth. And I think it's really difficult. Like parents need to pay more attention to what their kids are diving into. And I feel like it'd be easier to regulate if they were like a bit older to learn where they could understand. But
If I can jump in, because what you said about the schools is a big issue that has come up in where I live in Italy, and I've heard it also in other countries, is that kind of from middle school, you start getting information about your homework and stuff online. So you need to have a device to get this information. And a lot of people share WhatsApp. They use WhatsApp to like share ideas, you know, about what was in class and how to do your homework. So it's extremely difficult not to have a phone from middle school because the whole like society is kind of built around it. So it's a challenge. It would have to be everyone, involved, especially the schools, saying, no, we need to make sure that we don't require technology, because once you require it for one thing, it's a slippery slope, right? And you go deeper in.
I I think that having a more conscious and scaffolded experience in integrating technology and learning is the call to action. Like it's not like not having smartphones is different than not having flip phones at a certain age. It's a very different access level. Um, and I agree with you that like if there could be a standardization of just like we standardize other things like of digital literacy and access and like what is the right amount of time that a student who's 11 who is committed to developing the digital literacy skills that they need should have access, and how do we create the right balance for that? I think that's a question versus like should schools use or not use technology. I think it's like what does that path really look like?
Thank you. I think this has been a really great conversation. I would love to have each one of your opinions about, what you would, after this discussion, if we missed anything, what you're most passionate about like digital well-being, like what if youth are the leaders, in making a world where there's real digital well-being, what do you feel most passionate about, you personally doing or really happening around you? Dylan, you can start. I'll call on you.
Um, I think I think there is a lot of value in the digital world, like, but the important thing to understand is that, like, I guess connections and like time spent on, I think especially in like the digital world does not, it's not an equal trade-off with like stuff in, I guess you could say, like real life. So there has to be a balance. I think I'm most passionate, and I think what most people should understand most about like living in a like very digital world is like the importance of having a balance between um like your life online and life in real life, I guess. And so yeah, I think that comes with like an increased understanding, especially by like younger generations of the sort of risks of being online, what you're losing, what you could be exposed to, etc. And also an understanding from older generations that, that this is like a learning process for everybody. And like because I guess, technology exclusive of just phones and social media and AI is like evolving at such a rapid rate that like no one really has control over what's going on, and everyone is kind of in for the ride, I suppose. And so understanding that, yeah, I think it's one core tenet, at least I refer back to, is always balance. I guess
Um,
oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I share like a similar value as Dylan said. I also think about like it as like a balance because I feel like it's really helpful in some ways, like if you're using for in the right ways or for educational purposes. But I also see that to like the younger kids now are getting like phones and like access to technology so much earlier, and they're like, I've seen like 4 or 5 year olds just like being like iPad kids and like not wanting to go to the park because they're like busy on their iPad. So I feel like there should also be like restrictions from parents and stuff, but there's like at the same time like maintain a balance, not like fully like banning technology or doing something like that, but like also like using it like in effective ways and not just like using it for everything.
Can I
Awesome.
just,
I'm curious
yeah, go ahead.
to
I was
hear
gonna,
from,
yeah.
yeah, like just really quick as we close out. I know Grace and Kalena and Dylan, DT, you guys are involved in some real leadership work as young voices. I'm curious, like, what is the way that you think youth can get active in being the leaders of this change, and even in talking a little bit about how you guys are getting active?
Um, I like have like a mini like STEM organization like with like a few other high schoolers. What we do is kind of like we host STEM workshops around like our county or more like around like Nevada and South Nevada areas. We like teach elementary schoolers kind of like they do like hands-on experiments and stuff. Like it could be like mini experiments like our mini rocket launch, and they like learn the science behind it and stuff. And like that whole hour or like an hour and a half they go no technology, and their parents are like super happy to like send them there because they're like learning something, having fun with their friends, and at like the same time they're not using any technology. So I feel like being involved in like clubs or going to like camps, workshops in the summer, it could just be free. The ones we do are like free for like all students. Like doing something like that will like kind of keep them busy and also keep like their hands off technology and wanting to like desperately like watch something or do something like that.
Kind of piggybacking off of the club's idea, I know we've been working on at Generation Remix a bunch of ways that youth can help youth kind of solve this digital imbalance issue. And we've kind of been working on like two teams at Generation Remix where one is like game making and one is club making. But both of them are kind of having the purpose of like having conversation and kind of getting youth involved in their own habit changing and all the things that they want to change about how they're personally using technology. So I feel like kind of the best way to go about solving a lot of the issues we're seeing in the digital world is like really just have promoting conversations and promoting any type of genuine concern and connection over these issues because I feel like people talk about them in their own personal times occasionally, but I think it needs to be more widespread. And so I think kind of creating a chain reaction through generations um, and is really important. But also, I think it's really important that older generations see that like younger generations are not the ones that created all this, but they're the ones being most affected by it, and that they want to change instead of, and it's not necessarily I mean, they have a role in it, but it's not necessarily their fault that they're getting sucked into this. So I think it's important for it to be just a widespread conversation amongst people.
Grace and Bailey, I think we're missing their closing statements.
Yeah, I can just add on to the Generation Remix stuff. I think like from the club side, we're like definitely just trying to and I feel super passionate about this. It's just like getting kids to not want to be on their phones and like finding the joy and like life outside of technology. And I think like a good point Kalena made is that like kids are just like teens and kids are just like pawns in like a greater like scheme of like big companies wanting to profit off of them. And I think they're the perfect pawn in that because you don't really understand that you're being used in that way when you're that age. And so I think as they're the most vulnerable population, it's just really important for them to choose themselves actively to not want to be using their technology as often or using social media, and to have to want them to take that autonomy themselves. And so I think that yeah, I think that for me, I think the biggest well-being tool and that what Generation Remix is trying to do is just to have people want to not be on their phones and to know that there's life going on outside of that. And I noticed that with like my younger half siblings, like always on their phones. And it's like, it starts with like all your friends wanting to be on your phones, then you feel left out. So it's this kind of like chain reaction of everyone's on their phone, so we all have to be on their phone all the time. But it takes one person to kind of be like, no, guys, we should, you know, be more active in what's going on at family dinner or wherever we are, and like we can talk later. And I think that it's really important for these teens and kids to want to be the ones to say like, no, we should like take a break from this group chat, or guys, like, what are we doing, like we're not together right now, we can talk later, or like things like that.
Jumping off of what Grace said, I totally agree about encouraging younger individuals to get off their phones and like just go stop and smell the roses and just enjoy life. Because the biggest issue is the like, I think the not regulation, but like the lack of understanding how detrimental it can be for like young developing kids to be on their whatever all the time. So
Thank you. Really, thank you to all of you. It was really, really interesting, insightful discussion. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of Generation Remix, and also Bailey's working with us in Shield. So I'm really looking forward to this amazing group of young leaders. Yeah. I don't know, Tiffany, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, no, just thank you. And wow, what such insight. And this is what we need more of. We need to hear from people who actually have not created the problem, to the earlier point, and who have lived through it, that have some skills and insight to offer. I also will plug that this group and some others have been hard at work at some new resources to help schools, kids at schools take a leadership role by starting clubs and using the games and activities. So we're going to be putting those on our website in August, and they're going to be open source for anybody to use. So please stay tuned at generationremix.org for those resources.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day, however long that is, depending on where you are.
Thank you. Thanks for having everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.